What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, before I get into this video, I want to remind you guys, as always, that if you want to donate to this channel, if you choose to show love to Too Raw for TV, you can do so in the links provided in the description box if you want to. All right, now let's talk about the man of the hour. All right, Kawhi Leonard. I want to do a video just talking about Kawhi Leonard for a second because his evolution, uh, his steady evolution as an NBA player from being a prospect with the San Antonio Spurs so many years ago to being a defensive stalwart and a defensive stopper, mostly known for his defense, to becoming a improved scorer at the time of his NBA Finals MVP back in, I think it was 2014, to being the player that he is now, a guy who can get you between 27 to 30 points per game easy. You know what I'm saying? For years, we heard that he was the best two-way player in the game. You know, he took that title probably from Jimmy Butler some years ago. And now you have to at least concede that he's been the best player overall in these playoffs. There have been stretches where people thought it was Dame Lillard earlier on. There have been stretches where some people even thought Nikola Jokic had the nod. There have been some stretches where some people would even say earlier on before the injury that it was Kevin Durant. I think it was Kevin Durant probably until he got injured. And then there was a stretch, some people say, hey, well, you know, Steph Curry's playing the best basketball right now. But throughout the entire playoffs, it's been one guy who's been extraordinarily consistent, playing hurt and still being able to put up prodigious numbers across the board. And right now, because of this man's efforts, because of his ability to fill it up on the offensive end and ability to shut his man down and to play smart and effective help defense on the defensive end, because of those efforts, his team stands upon the precipice of their first ever NBA championship. It's a remarkable accomplishment and one that I don't think most people saw coming. Very few people saw coming. Maybe a few Toronto Raptors fans. Nobody really saw this coming. This is a team that I've watched throughout the entire postseason. And I thought that they probably, in the Eastern Conference, got to think about this before I say it, but I think they probably had the toughest first round matchup. People forget that the Orlando Magic, who they were down 0-1, remember they lost the first game in that series, the Toronto Raptors. Coming into that series, the Orlando Magic had won something like 11 consecutive games or 13 consecutive games. They were rolling. They were hot. They had that hot streak is what put them from maybe like 11th or 12th in the Eastern Conference and sneak past teams like the Miami Heat and get into the 8th spot. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I read a statistic that said the Orlando Magic had the best overall defensive rating of any team in the second half of the season after the All-Star break. So this was no ordinary AFC team they were playing. But the Toronto Raptors, Leonard, along with Pascal Siakam, earlier on, Siakam was sensational, along with Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka. Fred VanVleet struggled mightily earlier on in the playoffs, but the cast of characters, Danny Green, Kyle Lowry, the much maligned Kyle Lowry throughout his playoff runs, throughout his career, and so forth and so on. These ragtag bunch of players, man, they have had quite a run. They dispatched of the Orlando Magic, and then the next round they played a team that many thought may have had the best starting lineup outside the Golden State Warriors in the NBA, the Philadelphia 76ers. And in that series, if I'm not mistaken, the Toronto Raptors started with a disadvantage. And that series went down the wire. Nobody knew who was going to win that series, really. And I know one of my subscribers to this very day can't stand Kawhi Leonard because they beat his Philadelphia 76ers. There's always next year, man. But it took an improbable falling out of bounds, being defended by two 76ers, one of them being the 7 foot, 200 and probably 70-pound Joel Embiid. A shot that looked like it wasn't going to go, took 4 bounces and then fell in. And one of the greatest shots in playoff history and the only Game 7 game winner in playoff history. Kawhi Leonard officially had arrived, and a star was truly born that night. And they needed all 41 of his points. Then the next round, they played the heavily favored Milwaukee Bucks. I thought the Milwaukee Bucks had what it take to win a championship. We all know, if you follow 78 Sports TV, he thought so as well. Early on, the Bucks looked dominated. It looked like they might be in for a 4-game sweep or at best a 5-game victory over the Toronto Raptors. Of course, they took that 2-0 lead. It was a dominant 2-0 lead. But then the Toronto Raptors figured it out. They figured out how to contain Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis Antetokounmpo, I believe, will be, I think one day he will be possibly a top 2 player in the NBA. But he still has a lot of weaknesses he needs to improve upon. And the Raptors seized upon those weaknesses, dared the other players to make up for his lack of offensive explosion throughout the last 4 games of that series. And they couldn't answer the bell. And the Milwaukee Bucks chose to have the wrong time to have their first 4-game winning streak of the season. And the Toronto Raptors became one of the few teams that ever overcome an 0-2 deficit in a series and then to go on to win 4 straight. But people still doubt this Raptor team. Yeah, they're good, man. They're good, but the Warriors are the Warriors. Now, granted, they didn't have Kevin Durant. And granted, Andre Iguodala was a little bit banged up, a little bit nicked up. I thought that the Warriors were going to win in 6. I had the spread even predicted. So I wasn't shocked when they won Game 1, the Raptors. I said they're going to win Game 1, but they're going to lose Game 2. And they did lose Game 2. They fell apart around the seams in the second game, in the second half. And the Warriors snuck a victory on their home court. I said, see, the Warriors have arrived. But in Game 3 of this series, they were without Klay Thompson, who hurt himself, I believe it was late in Game 2. Without Klay Thompson, Steph Curry put on one of the best offensive performances in the finals, scoring 47 points. But it wasn't enough. Not having both Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant was too much. And the Warriors screwed up my picks. I had them winning games 3 and 4. They lost Game 3. Okay, well, the Toronto Raptors won, but the Warriors they're too good. This is a championship team, a dynasty. They're going to figure it out. They're going to win Game 4. You'll see. And early on, it looked like the Warriors were going to maybe blow the Raptors out. Kawhi was the only one keeping them in the game, but his 14 first quarter points, man. But I knew in the back of my mind the Warriors were playing with fire when they couldn't put Toronto away. At halftime, it was like 46-42, and I'm like, as poor as the Raptors played, Why are they only down by 4 or 5 points? They should be down by at least 15 points. And normally the third quarters in the playoffs belong to the Warriors, but not this time. Kawhi Leonard went on a tear, and he went on a personal run, and his scoring burst seized control of Game 4. And no matter how much the Warriors tried to fight back Kawhi Leonard or Marc Gasol or Fred VanVleet before he went out the game with an injury, Serge Ibaka with his big 20 points coming off the bench, they wouldn't let this game slip away. They put their collective foots on the throats of the Golden State Warriors, and they have them now on the brink of elimination. Now, this series isn't over, but statistics show that the Warriors, their chance of coming back to win this series are slim to none. Maybe, I'd say a little bit, maybe more than 1%. If anybody could do it, it's the Warriors, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think Game 5, I think the Toronto Raptors behind Kyle Lowry, behind that crowd in Jurassic Park, I think they're going to just basically, I think they're going to impose their will on the Warriors. I think you're going to see a dejected Warriors team sometime in the second half collectively pretty much quit. And Kawhi Leonard, I think now is ready to assume the mantle of perhaps the best player in the NBA. We've always been arguing about whether it's going to be LeBron hanging on for another year with that title, whether Kevin Durant's going to seize it from him, but maybe it's going to be this guy who Skip Bayless still derisively called number 2. I saw on Twitter Skip Bayless said that he called this his Game 4 performance of 36 points a good game for a bad guy. And he kept praising Serge Ibaka and other guys, and he kept criticizing Steph Curry. Skip Bayless is a troll who only has he has no interest in truly analyzing the games. He just wants to reinforce his conjured talking points. That's it. He's a troll. But I'm telling you something right now. These guys had better start respecting Kawhi Leonard, man. They better start respecting. To paraphrase Proximo from Gladiator, it's not having the quickest first step or the highest vertical leap, the greatest handles, the wettest jumper. That's not all there is. What makes you great? It matters, but it's not just that. What really truly makes you great is when you can make them love you. When you can make the people love you. That's what defines true greatness. Dr. J was able to do that. Mike was, of course, able to do that. Kobe was able to do that. Larry was able to do that. Magic was able to do that. It transcends all sports. The Babe, Ali. When you can get to the point where all you have to say is your first name or just your last name and people know who you are, that's when you have reached over to icon status. And maybe one day we might just be able to say Kawhi and people know who they're talking about. Now, this might not come to fruition, but the potential is there. And one thing I do like about Kawhi Leonard in closing, I liked when he said yesterday that he doesn't care about breaking records. He doesn't care about scoring the most points. The only thing he cares about is winning. This is a guy who's not enamored with his stat sheet. The only thing that he cares about is that W in the win column.